Welcome back to Torah in 10. I'm Jody Burkell, and I'm so excited to be here with you again. It's Parshas Vayechi, and this week we're shedding light on forgiveness, probably one of the hardest things to do. Or is it just me? Rabbi Sacks teaches us a beautiful idea. He says that Judaism allows us to inhabit a culture of grace and hope. If we work on ourselves, we can be forgiven. What makes Judaism unique is that forgiveness is built into the system. We've got a whole day dedicated to it, Yom Kippur, where we focus on tshuva, which means to return. But can we just say, I'm sorry, and move on? Or once a year, do we get to sweep our mistakes under the rug? We know that this is not what forgiveness is about according to Judaism. Once again, we look to the Torah and to Joseph, who initiates a turning point in history. Rabbi Sacks says Joseph's act of forgiving his brothers was the first act of forgiveness in literature. He was able to do this, as we discussed last week, because Joseph sets up an elaborate plan to make sure his brothers were capable of remorse and atonement. Even before Joseph reveals himself, the brothers realize their mistake. When they first come to Egypt and Joseph accuses them of being spies, they say to each other, surely we are guilty because of our brother. We saw how upset he was when he pleaded for his life, but we didn't listen. And that's why this distress has come upon us. They knew the depth of their mistake and they acknowledged their guilt. Joseph goes even further in his attempt to help his brothers achieve a complete repentance. Maimonides, one of our greatest sages, describes this as when we have changed to the extent that we've become a different person. Judah, the brother who suggested to sell Joseph to slavery in the first place, when faced with a similar situation with his brother Benjamin, steps up and says, "Take me instead." This is what Joseph was waiting for. He knew then that his brothers had done a complete tshuva because he saw that Judah, when faced with a similar situation, chose differently. He was now a different person and therefore is forgiven by Joseph. This, says Rabbi Sacks, is a fundamental idea in Judaism, that our morality is based on guilt and not on shame. What's the difference? He says, shame is what you feel when you imagine other people seeing what you've done, and your instinct is to hide from your behavior. Guilt is an inner voice that we can't hide from no matter how hard we try. It's a feeling from the inside when we recognize that we haven't lived up to who we truly are. The key difference, says Rabbi Sacks, is that in a culture of shame, wrongdoing is seen as a stain upon a person. In guilt cultures, there's a fundamental difference between the person and his or her acts. I remember early on in my parenting years, I learned the idea that when our kids misbehave, we have a tendency to say, you're a bad boy or a bad girl. But this creates shame in a person. So I began to say that was bad behavior, or you made a poor choice, because there's hope there that we can learn from our mistakes and grow. It changes from attacking the person, and this needs to be extended to ourselves as well. We're not the sum of our mistakes. Although we could all make better choices sometimes, they don't define who we truly are, and that is a life-changing idea. Rabbi Sacks encourages us to listen to the inner voice, the voice that guides us, that when we mess up, because we all mess up sometimes, there's a way forward to acknowledge, to show remorse, to apologize, make amends, and change. Forgiveness means I fundamentally reaffirm your worth as a person, despite the fact that we both know the act was wrong. Forgiveness is possible. It's not easy. Judaism teaches us that there is always hope for a person. Every morning when we wake up, one of the blessings we say is, my God, the soul you placed within me is pure, meaning it's a part of God that can't be tainted. Regardless of what happens each day, we're not defined by our mistakes. Of course, we have to learn to make good choices, but we all know falling down is part of life. Getting back up after we fall is what matters most. King Solomon says a righteous person falls down 7 times and gets up. If we work on ourselves and really work hard, we acknowledge that, like Joseph, there's a greater picture going on, then we'll find it easier to forgive ourselves and others, healing our relationships with others and ourselves at the very same time. This is truly another life-changing idea. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom.